Hello, my amazing friends. Today, I have something very special for you. This is not just a story. This is a story that will change the way you think. It will change the way you feel. And maybe, just maybe, it will change your life. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you are nobody? Like you are too small, too ordinary, too unknown to make a difference? Good, because the man in this story felt the same way. His name was William Shakespeare, and today, more than 400 years after his death, people all over the world still read his words, perform his plays, and speak his language. He gave us Romeo and Juliet. He gave us Hamlet. He gave us Macbeth. He showed us love, betrayal, ambition, jealousy, everything that makes us human. But here is the most beautiful part of his story. He was not born rich. He did not go to a famous university. He had no powerful friends, no connections, no money. He was just an ordinary boy from a small, quiet town with big, beautiful dreams. So if you are learning English today, if you sometimes struggle with words, if you wonder how to express yourself, this story is for you. Because Shakespeare started exactly where you are right now. Sit back, listen carefully, and enjoy. This is the story of the greatest writer who ever lived. It was a cold April morning in the year 1564. In a small English town called Stratford-upon-Avon, a baby boy was born. His mother held him close. His father looked at him with tired, hopeful eyes. They named him William. They did not know it then, but this baby would one day change the world. Stratford-upon-Avon was a quiet, simple town. There were narrow streets, wooden houses, and a beautiful river. People worked as farmers, traders, and craftsmen. Life was slow and ordinary. William's father, John Shakespeare, made and sold leather gloves in the town market. He was a hard-working man. People respected him. William's mother, Mary, came from a good farming family. She was kind, strong, and full of love for her children. William was the third of 8 children. The house was always noisy, full of laughter, crying, running feet, and the smell of leather and bread. But young William was different from the other children. He was curious. He was quiet. He watched everything. He listened to how people talked. He noticed how people laughed when they were happy. He noticed how their voices broke when they were sad. He watched old men tell stories by the fire. He watched women sing to their babies. He watched everything, and he remembered everything. At that time, there was no television, no phones, no internet. People entertained themselves with stories. Sometimes traveling actors came to town and performed plays in the streets. Young William would stand and watch with wide, shining eyes. He loved it. The costumes, the voices, the drama, the magic of it all. Something was waking up inside him, something powerful. He just didn't know it yet. When William was 7 years old, he started school. The school was a small, simple building with wooden benches and a very strict teacher. But what William learned there would shape his whole life. He studied Latin, history, poetry, and literature. He read the great stories of ancient Rome and Greece. He discovered writers whose words stayed in his heart forever. But William was not only a student. He was a living, breathing, feeling boy. He loved nature. He walked through green fields and listened to birds. He played with his friends and ran through the streets. He was normal in every way, except for one thing. Words made him feel alive. Stories made him feel free. And then, just when life seemed calm and good, trouble came. William's father, John, started having serious money problems. He had borrowed money. Business was not going well. The family that once lived in comfort was now struggling. There were days when they worried about food. William watched his father's face change. He saw the lines of worry. He saw the tired eyes. He saw how quickly a good life can fall apart. It was painful, but instead of turning away from the pain, William did something different. He observed it. He felt it deeply. He stored it in his heart. Later in his life, he would write about exactly this, how quickly life can change, how one moment a man stands tall and the next moment he is broken, how life is full of both joy and sorrow. But that was still in the future. For now, William was just a boy with big dreams, and those dreams were about to lead him somewhere unexpected.
By the time William Shakespeare turned 18, he was no longer a boy. He was a young man. He was thoughtful, well-read, and full of energy. And like many young men, he fell in love. Her name was Anne Hathaway. Anne was beautiful, intelligent, and strong, but there was one thing that surprised people. Anne was 26 years old, 8 years older than William. In those times, it was very unusual for a younger man to marry an older woman. But love does not follow rules. William was deeply in love, and soon there was a big problem. Anne was going to have a baby before they were married. In those days, this was a serious matter. Society was very strict. An unmarried couple expecting a child brought shame to both families. So William and Anne got married quickly. In November 1582, at just 18 years old, William Shakespeare became a husband. 6 months later, their first daughter, Susanna, was born. Then, 2 years later, Anne gave birth to twins, a boy named Hamnet and a girl named Judith. At just 21 years old, William Shakespeare was a husband and a father of 3. Life was moving very fast. But here was the big question: how would he feed his family? He had no money, no stable job. He had no interest in making gloves like his father. He had no land, no title, no fortune. He had only words. And then, silence. Between 1585 and 1592, William Shakespeare simply disappeared from history. These are called the lost years. No one knows exactly where he went or what he did. Some say he became a school teacher. Some say he joined a traveling theater group. Some say he got into trouble. One story says he was caught hunting illegally on a rich man's land and had to run away from Stratford. Nobody knows the truth. But here is what we do know. When Shakespeare reappeared in history in 1592, he was in London. He was ready, he was hungry, and he was about to become a legend. London in the late 1500s was alive. It was loud, crowded, dangerous, and exciting. It was the heart of England, and at its center was the world of theater, a world full of actors, writers, music, and magic. Shakespeare arrived in London with almost nothing. No money, no connections, no famous name, just talent, passion, and a burning need to tell stories. He started small. He worked as an actor in small theater groups. He watched and learned. He studied how great performers moved, spoke, and made people feel emotions. And quietly, in the background, he started writing his own plays. His early plays were fun and light, comedies that made people laugh and forget their troubles. But Shakespeare was not satisfied. He wanted more. He wanted to write plays that made people feel something deep, something real, something true. And he did exactly that. By 1592, Shakespeare was well known in London's theatre world, but not everyone was happy for him. A famous playwright named Robert Greene called him an upstart crow, a nobody who was pretending to be great. Shakespeare said nothing, he just worked harder. Then, in 1593, disaster struck. A deadly disease called the plague spread across London. Theaters were forced to close. Shakespeare had no work and no income. But did he stop? No. Instead, he picked up his pen and wrote poetry. He wrote 2 long, beautiful poems that became famous across England. Even Queen Elizabeth I, the ruler of the country, admired his work. When the theaters finally reopened in 1594, Shakespeare came back stronger than ever. He joined a famous acting company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. He was not just writing, he was performing, directing, and creating. Play after play came from his mind, each one more powerful than the last. Romeo and Juliet, the most beautiful and heartbreaking love story ever told. Hamlet, a young prince torn between revenge and truth. Macbeth, a brave man destroyed by ambition. Othello, a great warrior broken by jealousy. London loved him, England loved him, and the world was about to love him too.
In 1599, Shakespeare did something extraordinary. Together with his acting company, he built his own theater. They called it the Globe Theater. Imagine it, a large circular theater open to the sky. Thousands of people rushing in from the streets, rich and poor, young and old, all coming together to see Shakespeare's latest play. The smell of excitement in the air, the sound of the crowd, and then silence as the actors stepped onto the stage. This was Shakespeare's home, his kingdom, his dream made real. And here, at the Globe, he performed his greatest works: Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, Julius Caesar, Othello, The Tempest. These were not just plays, they were windows into the human soul. As the years passed, Shakespeare became one of the richest men in the theater world. He earned money from his plays, his poems, and his share in the Globe Theatre. He bought a grand house in Stratford called New Place. He was no longer the glovemaker's son struggling to survive. Then, in 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died. The new king was King James I. For a moment, everyone wondered, would the new king close the theaters? But King James loved Shakespeare. He invited Shakespeare's company to perform for him at the royal court, and then he gave them the greatest honor possible. He renamed them the King's Men. Shakespeare had gone from a poor boy in Stratford to the official playwright of the King of England. In his final years of writing, between 1603 and 1611, Shakespeare's plays became deeper and more emotional. They became darker, more personal, more powerful, because Shakespeare himself had changed. He had experienced fame and loss. He had seen power and betrayal. He had felt love and grief. His words were no longer just stories. They were his life. In 1613, Shakespeare did something that surprised everyone. He retired. After years of living in London, writing plays, performing, and chasing success, he went home. Back to Stratford. Back to quiet streets, green fields, and the river he had loved as a child. He spent his days walking in his garden, reading books, and sitting by the fire. He talked with his daughters. He welcomed old friends. He rested. But in the spring of 1616, something happened. Shakespeare attended a dinner with friends. There was laughter, food, and wine. It was a happy evening. But afterward, he fell very ill. His health dropped quickly. His family gathered around him. They knew the end was coming. On April 23, 1616, at the age of 52, William Shakespeare took his last breath. The world went quiet. But before he died, he wrote a short poem for his gravestone, a warning to anyone who might disturb his grave. Even in death, his words were sharp, funny, and powerful. That was Shakespeare. Always the writer, always the poet. When they buried him in Holy Trinity Church, the very church where he was baptized as a baby, the whole town of Stratford came to say goodbye. Actors, writers, family, neighbors, old friends. Tears fell, prayers were whispered, and the greatest writer in history was laid to rest in the quiet town where his story began. But here is the most important truth of all. His story did not end there. It was just beginning. His plays were translated into every language on earth. His words appeared in movies, songs, and speeches. Phrases he invented, like break the ice, wild goose chase, all that glitters is not gold, became part of everyday English. His stories of love, power, jealousy, and fate are still performed in theaters all over the world, every single day. Over 400 years later, Shakespeare is still everywhere. And why? Because he understood people. He understood you. He understood the fear of failure, the pain of betrayal, the joy of love, and the hunger for meaning. He wrote about things that every human being, in every country, in every century, can feel in their heart. My amazing friends, here is his message to you. He was just a boy, a small-town boy with no money, no power, and no famous name, but he had a dream, and he never let go of it, not when his family struggled, not when people laughed at him, not when the theaters closed, not when life got hard. He kept writing, he kept believing, he kept going. And today, his name is written in history forever. Now it is your turn. You have a dream too. Maybe you want to be a writer, a speaker, a teacher, a creator, someone who leaves something beautiful in this world. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let doubt silence you. You are stronger than you think. You are closer than you know. Start today. Work hard. Tell your story. And always remember the words of the man himself. It is not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves. William Shakespeare. See you in the next story, my amazing friends. Stay inspired, stay unstoppable.